Hey horror fools, it's Dogma again with my HHN 34 house rankings. And there's no time to lose because if you're seeing this when it's uploaded, you only have a few short weeks to get down to the bloodstained state to see the rather monkey paw-esque houses that Universal Studios has on hand for you. So let's tighten up those deathly afraid necklaces, polish off that mocktail, and grab ourselves a cat toy as we head down to the bottom of the list with our house number 10. Fallout, a house that's not bad, it's just disappointing in the grand scheme of things. And it's our first example of the monkey paw effect, I would say, for this year's HHN. Because video games never really get a lot of notice at HHN, I would argue. Because counting the two video game IPs we got this year, we're only at 7. We've had HHN for going on 34 years now, technically 35 if you count the diet year, and we've only ever had 7, which is really weird because video games have become so popular over time that you would think they would try and bring those in more often than usual. But counting this as a video game house is kind of a weird asterisk next to it, because it's based off the Amazon show, which isn't really that horror related, I would argue, for being a Fallout series. It's more of an action show. And with that, it becomes less of an actual haunted house and feels more of like a commercial for the Fallout TV show. Because there's not really any major scares in it. It's mostly show scenes of iconic moments from the show. So show scenes should be kind of quick and to the point, which I think most of the Fallout ones aren't really. You either get no context at all, so if you haven't seen the show you don't know what's going on, or you get so much context that you can't actually appreciate it as you're going through the house because you're missing parts. And the fact that most of the scenes are just, look at our main characters, aren't they so cool? And not really, oh, look at this scary situation in this post-apocalyptic area. There's probably only 2 actual scare areas when you're in the super duper mart and the ghouls are inside the refrigerators coming after you. But that's such a short scene. There's only maybe 2 ghouls there, maybe 3 depending on if you're lucky. And the giant gulper, they can only do so much with the space that it's in. It can only get so many people in such a short amount of time. But one thing I can say is that at least the house looks really nice. The sets are amazing. But I would have really loved to try and see them make the house look like it was during the day. Because in the TV show, a lot of it takes place during the day in the desert, in the middle of nowhere, essentially, on the West Coast. And I know HHN can do more well-lit houses. They've done it before. There's actually one here this year that's going to be later on in the list. So it would have been fun to see them try and actually take a crack at making a desert wasteland actually look like a desert wasteland. But overall, Fallout is an okay house. I hope next time we get a video game based house, we can actually get it based off the video game so it can be a lot more breathing room and can dig into some of those cool details that are inside the deep parts of like the video game lore. Grave of Flesh is a really weird house in the grand scheme of things, because usually if you ask somebody about what makes a HHN house an HHN house, it's usually very good set design and excellent details. And I personally feel that Grave of Flesh has pretty decent set design, but I have no idea what the actual details of this house is. Because it's supposed to be what happens after you've been buried, after you're at your own funeral, which you're technically not at your own funeral, you're at your own grave site. You've missed the funeral completely. You're already in the ground. And then you kind of proceed to go deeper and deeper into the ground, running into different types of mobs like killer moles and other dead skeleton people and demon type creatures that are hunting you, the actual Grave of Flesh monsters. And the actual inside of the maze is very samey, I would argue, because you can only do so much with the phrase, you're underground. So most of the walls come out just looking like brown dirt. But there are some cool parts of it. Like I like the part where you see the shiny like mineral reserves. Like I'm assuming it's supposed to be gold or diamonds in the ground, and you can see that they're in there spinning and waiting for just someone to dig them up eventually. And then also not to mention the actual middle part of the house, which is probably the most interesting, where it has the upside down staircase and the giant doorway that looks like you're entering, I'm assuming, the underworld. But overall, it's such a basic house. Like if you were to tell me that this was at any other overly expensive haunt, I'd believe you, because it doesn't really feel like an HHN house. There's nothing really that screams this is specifically made from the minds of the Horror Nights creative team, you know what I mean? And with that, that's kind of why it's down here at number 9. It's not bad, it's just very straight to the point. Like someone had an idea about monsters underground hunting you after you die, and then they just kind of ran with it without making major details around it, you know? Dolls Let's Play Dead is a really fun house, and it kind of hurts to put it so low, but because of the rest of the houses we have this year being so good, it just pushes it further and further down the list of houses this year. My very first HHM was 24, and that's when they had Dollhouse of the Damned, which was a really fun house. I want to say that was my second house I ever went into. So seeing the killer toys idea come back 10 years later is actually kind of refreshing. That and the way to make it feel like an actual old school HHN house, there's buttons. I love buttons, and there's 3 of them in this house, so you gotta keep an eye out for them. The very first one right in the first room, being the doorbell on the house, is actually my favorite. I just love the fact you can just hit it continuously and it'll always ring like an actual toy house doorbell. That, and this is the house that I think actually has really good bright house lighting for a haunt. Because since you're supposedly in a little girl's room, I'm assuming they would assume it's bright in this dollhouse. So there's not really a lot of dark spots. And I think that works out because a lot of the scare actors aren't actually hiding. In this house, most of them are actually just sitting out. And that's a choice, but I think it's a really good one because it gets to the point where every room you go into, you're not actually sure which ones are going to stay still and which ones are actually going to move and come after you. And there's a really good one of a doll that's connected to what looks like a computer soundboard, I'm assuming, some sort of microchip. And that one actually got me because I actually had to stop and stare and look at it because they were so still. I actually had to turn and ask, you think that's an actual person? And as soon as I did that, that's when they chose to jump, and it got me right out of the gate. It was amazing. But overall, no major notes. I like it, and I love when HHN brings back old concepts they haven't done in a very long time, like killer dolls that are trying to get you. Jason Universe is here mostly because of the second half of the house. And it's kind of weird because technically Jason Universe is 2 miniature haunts put together. The first half is showing off the new Jason that's been recently debuted, and it's going to be the current look of Jason from here on out until they switch it up again in a couple years probably. And then the second half is kind of a legacy house where they show all the older Jasons coming after you in this huge like final rush where there's not actually a lot of set design. It's mostly just a very narrow hallway and a bunch of Jasons that I'm assuming are on risers of some sort because they are way higher than mostly anyone who's going to be walking through this house. They are up there. But I kind of wish it started with a little bit of a mini gauntlet, kind of like beginning to the present and then a present into the past type of idea is what I thought would have been really fun. Because the whole first part of the house is actually kind of boring. It's kind of samey. It is a bunch of Jasons, which is really nice, but you can only have Jason come out looking the same so many times, holding just slightly different variations of a sharp object before it starts getting kind of repetitive and kind of boring, honestly. That and the fact that this house has one of the things I hate most about certain haunts, and it's the scare of the victim comes out to warn you about Jason, but nothing happens to the victim. I think that's really weird. I think if you're going to have something like that, there should be a bit where Jason comes and pulls him back in to do the reset, because at that point it's just kind of a guy screaming and then going back into the darkness. But also I have to bring up everyone who plays Mrs. Voorhees in that house. They do really well. I love that little transition scene with the punch buggy there and her doing the monologue of why she's upset. I wish there was a little bit more of Mrs. Voorhees in the house, actually. So if you want to have one of the most claustrophobic experiences you can at this year's HHN, most definitely go check out the Jason Universe house, because that ending bit is actually really intense, all things considered. Hatchet and Chains was my most anticipated house this year, mostly coming from last year because it was my favorite part of Slaughtered Cinema 2. And unfortunately, I don't know if it's because I overhyped myself, but I did find myself being a little disappointed with this house. It's still a really good house. That's why it's ranked so high. I still like it. But I think I was expecting more Western and less demon, because there's lots of demons in this house. They're all over the shop. One of the weirdest things in this house that I've noticed is there are no guns in this house. There is gunfire, there are bullet holes to represent that there is guns, but there's not actually anyone holding any revolvers or shotguns or anything like that to actually fight the demons. It's mostly just lassos, fists to the face, and dynamite, which is really cool, but it feels like there should have been like a quick draw scene or someone trying to desperately reload the revolver as a demon comes towards them, and like either they successfully load it or they don't and they get attacked, something like that. Like the only time I think you see one is someone holding one in a silhouette, and that's about it. It's only there for like a split second, and that just seemed weird to me because you would think a Western house would have at least some type of gunfire or gunplay in it, and it doesn't really seem like there's actual much bounty hunting. It's mostly them just fighting demons, but it's not like them like opening up, you know, like an old piece of paper and seeing that like, oh, this demon's had a bounty of like $60,000 or whatever would be the equivalent in old Western times of a good amount. It feels more like a town that's just under siege by demons, and then there's cowboys there to save the day, it feels like, you know? Which is fun, but it doesn't seem like what they're trying to sell is actually what they're showing. It just kind of seems like demons versus cowboys, which is a fun idea. I also like the overall set design. I love the fact that you've got the train to go in there. Like, I know it's a projection, but it looks so cool when you're walking and you see a full train just barreling down the tracks. And the demons that they do have are very creative looking. They're all not the same. They're actually very different types of demons. Also, it's a really fast house. The first time I went through it, I kind of was like in and out, and it was very disorienting a bit. I feel like I would have been happier if it was actually a much slower house, maybe kind of like a demons at like high noon type style, something a little bit slower. But that's not really a deal breaker in the grand scheme of things for Hatchet and Chains. It feels just kind of more like a compromise of, here's our idea, we're going to run with it at high speeds, hold on for the ride. It's literally a galloping horse ride through, essentially. Fnaf is our second video game IP kind of this year, and it's also our second Monkey's Paw for this year, because it's based off the movie and not really the games or the books or anything like that, which is fine because as soon as that movie came out and it was made by Blumhouse, it was only a matter of time before HHN and Blumhouse and Scott Cawthon teamed up to actually make a house for this thing. But one of the downsides is there's only so much you can do with FNAF without completely destroying your budget for a haunted house, and they did the best they could because you get that very first picture perfect moment of the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza building facility, and then as soon as you go through the doors and you turn right, you see the main stage with Bonnie, Chica, and Freddy just sitting there doing their thing, talking and singing and whatnot. And then it's downhill from there because there's only so much. You can't really keep that hype up at that point. You do get some really good animatronic scares as well, but there's only so much they can do. They mostly can just stand there and kind of swing their arms and evilly glare at people, you know? I do really love the moment where they actually have Freddy kind of jogging down a hallway to chase you. I think that's a really good scene of using the puppetry to actually move, and you see the legs actually walking with you. And same thing with Foxy. It didn't really work in the beginning of the season, but them even trying to attempt the idea of him running down the hallway is actually really fun. But other than the actual animatronic scares, everything else in there is kind of a take it or leave it kind of deal. This house is way more spectacle than it is actually for scares or for scene accuracy or anything like that, I would argue. I'm honestly surprised that FNAF got its own house like fully. With it being based off the Blumhouse movie and not like actually anything else, it would have been really easy for them to do one of those Blumhouse Presents houses they did a couple years back. You know, where they have 2 to 3 different Blumhouse properties all smashed into one house. That way you only have to do half a house with the animatronics and not try and stretch it all the way into one big one. My big brain idea that I thought would have been a fun idea would have been the first half be a Megan house and then the second half be a FNAF house. You could have easily had it where the first half was Megan, and then after that, you walk in, you see the facade, you get the 3 on the stage, and then you do like 4 or 5 quick rooms. You get one with Foxy running down the hall, you get the cupcake, you get Afton, you get the scooping room, pretty much just the really exciting parts that are in the house right now, but just condensed down to the rooms that people are actually really excited for. But overall, I'm happy that FNAF finally made it to HHN. If any video game property was going to make it, it was going to be this one, especially after Blumhouse got its hands on it. That and the queue line is a people eater. El Artista is kind of funny because it's kind of a pseudo third video game house if you think about it, because if you know anything about Layers of Fear, it's kind of the same idea of an artist trapped in a building going crazy because the estate's essentially haunted and it's torturing him while he actually tries to do work. And I would argue if you like this house, like this is your #1 house this year, you should go look up Layers of Fear and give it a shot. It's not a hard game, it's more or less a walking simulator, so it's kind of like a haunted house. This house is beautiful. Literally, as soon as you walk in and you see the facade, it is amazing. and it doesn't stop there. I love how it actually kind of feels like a house too, how you kind of walk out one way and you're in a courtyard and you kind of double back into the house. I think that's amazing. And with him making all these different creations, it actually shows in the house because there's lots of different characters you can run into, and they're all slightly different in their own ways. It's amazing. I think the big highlight for this house is probably the gargoyle. I think most people can appreciate someone on a wire actually flying through a house back and forth. And then technically, because of how you double back on yourself, you can see him technically twice because he'll end up coming into the other room and chilling there for a bit and then flying back out, which I think is fun. But there's not really much else to talk about with this house. Because it's original, it's most definitely a house that if you do no research, you probably won't know what's going on, but it's so different and diverse with how it shows things that you don't need that. You'll just be in awe by everything that's actually going on around you. We've made it, everybody. Wyatt 6 is the final monkey's paw of this HHN season. Because there wasn't a lot of us asking for a WBE house, but I was one of them. I've always wanted to see a WBE house ever since I found out that there was an Undertaker one back in Hollywood back in 2001, I want to say it was. And then we didn't get another one until 20 plus years later. And I am going to be honest, when I first heard that there was going to be a wrestling themed house, I was very excited, and then as soon as I heard it was just going to be the Wyatts, I was kind of disappointed. I'd much rather have had a more generic WB horror house. There's been so many great horror characters that will probably never get featured because we're probably not going to get another one of these houses for probably another 20 years at this point. But once I started actually appreciating it for what it was, I really did love this house. This is a really good house. It's a great tribute for one of the more modern spooky guys who are no longer with us, being this creative mind of Bray Wyatt and his weird world of essentially tormented and twisted, kind of fairy tale-esque characters. I love the beginning of the house of how it recreates the first time the Wyatts showed up. It pretty much caused havoc in the backstage area, taking everybody out. I think that was a fun recreation. And then I love how it kind of goes from you're in the WWE backstage world, and then it slowly takes you into a different universe of where these monsters actually control everything and do all their sick stuff that they want to do to their victims. Some of their victims being actual WWE wrestlers. If you know anything about wrestling, if you look around, you can actually find different wrestlers in their attires being tortured or killed and tied up and whatnot. And I think that's actually a really fun small detail for people who actually know what they're looking for. That, and I really like the fact they have a throwback to the original Bray Wyatt, the cult leader and the Bayou type character. Because I feel a lot of times when people talk about Bray Wyatt, they skip straight to the Mr. Rogers sweater in a different dimension, killer clown character, and they go straight past the actual, at least what I consider to be the more interesting character and more fun character to listen talk. That, and I don't know where they got some of these guys playing these characters because they are tall and big, which I thought was really fun. But I would also like to put down that if you don't know anything about wrestling and you're not willing to actually research about this character and how he's pretty much spread into the universe of WWE and became so popular, you're not really going to like this house. This is up high because I'm a wrestling fan. That probably won't work for people who are just casual or don't like wrestling at all. This will probably be very confusing, and it kind of shows a little bit because this seems to be one of the lower weighted houses. Terrifier is such a good house because Art the Clown is such a charismatic character. We haven't had an actual popular killer like this, I would argue, since Freddy. Someone who can make you laugh and also be completely terrified and disgusted at the same time, depending on what he's actually up to. That and the fact that his movies kind of feel like they're haunted houses, because there's not really a good amount of story to it. Most people are there just for the kills, and the kills are really good. And this house, for the most part, recreates those kills very well. I think the only one I really didn't like is the actual hacksaw kill because it kind of skips around it. It uses a silhouette and then you see the aftermath. I think you'd easily had an actual like mannequin there and him just like pretend to cut down the middle. I think that would have been really fun. Obviously, you got to get around the clothing situation, but I think you could have figured that out. I think that would have been a really easy thing to actually get around. I also like the fact that the arts that are in the house seem like they're having fun. they'll interact with you if you say something or do something a lot of times, which for HHN is a bit of a rarity because most of the time, most scare actors have to stick to their sound cues and their times, and that's it, and they just pretty much do that over and over again. With art, it feels like there's enough time in between that they could do bits, they can make faces, they can interact with you, and it makes it just a little bit more personal when you say something and they do something in reaction to that. One thing I do want to get off my chest though is, I honestly think the split path at the end is completely overrated. I get the idea, maybe it's the fact that I got to the house a little later, I didn't get to it on opening day, so maybe the water was turned down and not as much as it was for that first weekend. But it's not that bad, it's not that wet. I think it's more or less just a gimmick. They could have easily made it one path and had the body bags from the dry set, bits of the water from the wet path, because honestly, taking the dry path, you miss a little bit. Like, they have a silhouette screen of the main protagonist character cutting off Art's head, but if you're not paying attention, you miss that, and then you just walk out and you see Art without a head, and it's like, why, when did that happen, how did that happen? Where if they just would have combined both paths together, you would have got to see the scare actor actually holding up Art's head at the end of the thing, and then seeing Art the Clown without the head and the squeaky horn. But other than that being a overhyped gimmick bit at the end, I think Terrifier does really well at being a kind of an abridged version of the trilogy of movies that are out. And honestly, it beats actually watching those movies, if I'm being honest. I originally had no high expectations for Gulkin. I kind of thought, if anything, it was probably going to be one of the more generic side of the original houses, but it blew me away, honestly. I love this house. This is my favorite house of the year. Not even a contest. The HHN team doing folk horror has always been really well done. My first house ever was kind of a folk horror house that was Roanoke back in 24. And much like Dolls, it's really nice to see 10 years later them try to do something again, but just a little different. Because it's still that, but it's set inside of a up northerner cold area. And one of the things I love about this house is it has 3 very huge set pieces. One in the beginning, one in the middle, and one at the finish. The big spinning mural in the beginning, the Wicker Man in the middle, and the giant monster that devours you at the finish is amazing. And that monster at the end is actually really good, because as soon as you get swallowed and you're going through like the intestinal tract of it, all the scare actors who were in there, who were pretty much blending in with the stomach of that monster, are on their top game. They come out of the woodworks essentially after you. But it's not just the finish. Pretty much the whole house is non-stop. There's always monsters coming out from the left and right, and even above you they have monsters coming down to get you. It's a whole thing. It's amazing. It's kind of hard to explain, because first time going through Gulkin, it clicked like immediately. Like as soon as I saw the first scare of the woman with her eyes changing colors with the lights, I was sold. I'm like, oh, this is it. This is gonna be a perfect house, and it was. Every time I've gone through it, it's been perfect. They've been on their game. The timings have been great. I've been there at the end of the night, and they're still putting in 110%, even though it's way past 2 o'clock, and they probably all want to go home. But they just are dedicated, which I love. And honestly, sometimes a good house, you just know it when you see it. It's a gut feeling. But with great design set pieces, killer costumes, awesome looking characters, an amazing cast, I couldn't ask for anything more, really, and that is why Gulkin, Monsters of the North, is my favorite house at HHN 34. Alright, that's my list, and I'm probably sticking to it, because HHN is an event where just one run could completely demolish your opinion on a house, or pull it out of the ashes like a phoenix. So doing this with multiple weeks left, some things may move around, who knows. If anything changes, maybe I'll update things and put it in a pin in the comments below. But what are you thinking, not only of my list, but of the event itself? And what do you consider to be your house rankings? Let everyone know below, that'd be fun. Or if you've already made your own house ranking video, you can let us know, we could all go check that out. That seems like it may be fun too. And most of all, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the fog a little later.